Hello, welcome back to YCFT. Frequent viewers of this channel will know that towards the end of last year, I kept telling Sam that we were going to be doing Puppet Master as my birthday choice. And you were not enthused with the idea.
I was cautious about it.
I think the main put off was, right, I'm going to tell you guys the pitch I gave to Sam. There's also that fear of jumping into a long-running franchise that you know very little about.
There's like 15 films inside.
Yeah, there's loads of them. They're all like straight to video as well. Mm-hmm. So I said, it's about this guy
This
bloke who is psychic, and he sends a psychic message out to all of his psychic companions to come meet him at this hotel called the Bodega. When they get there, he has taken his own life. And whilst they try and investigate what happened and try and look for his research, they are slowly killed off one by one by living puppets.
So, I'm going to just butt in, and right away, I don't really know why I wasn't more intrigued with that pitch. Because
I think it's a good pitch.
It's an intriguing premise, and also, it only really kind of struck me, actually, like, saying it again, and then, now having actually watched the film, of how reminiscent it is of horror stories that I genuinely really love, like, Shirley Jackson's Haunting of Hill House. That is essentially about a group of psychic researchers that come together in this old spooky house to try and stir shit up. It's a very similar thing, and then, that is something that Stephen King reused in Rose Red. Again, like a team of psychics coming together to stay in this really old, decrepit mansion. So I don't really know why my brain never made the connection in my head, like, I would like this, but I was still nervous about
Possessed puppets.
Plus possessed puppets, yeah. I don't know, I was just nervous.
Yeah. So this film, Puppet Master, also there's Puppet Space Master, Puppet Master, The Puppet Master. Are the three names it kind of goes by.
You got that?
So released in 1989.
Yeah.
Directed by, I'll let you say his name because you know how to pronounce his name.
Thank you. It's David Schmoller, who also did Tourist Trap, by the way.
The writer was a guy called Charles Band.
Yes.
Now, Schmoller and Band met on another doll-related film called Dolls, which is where they kind of had the idea for this film.
Right.
I kind of stumbled across this film. I think I was just doing some work. I noticed, I think it was on like Prime or something like that, and I was like, I've heard of it, don't know anything about it, I'm just going to put it on. I did no work that night. I was just engrossed in this movie.
A love story.
I have watched 6 of these now. I even got so Full Moon is the company that makes the films, and I wanted to talk about them for a little bit before we dive into this one, because you can get them as an add-on for Prime.
Yeah.
And that's why I watched the majority of them. There's actually a bunch of them that are now just on Prime in general for a bit, which is how I've been watching them. So I did support them for a bit. So Full Moon features, if I get some of the names, they've had several different names and spin-offs, so I might get a couple of them wrong. But they started off as Full Moon features, and the first Puppet Master for a while was going to be a theatrical release. Mm-hmm. They ended up getting a deal with Paramount as part of their straight-to-video services. So this film only had a budget of like $700,000 or something along those lines, and they just kept going making straight-to-video horror movies. You had the Demonic Toys was one to do, the Subspecies, they did Castle Freak, which was obviously a very famous film. They had a famous like magazine and like featurette thing called Video Zone.
Yeah.
They had others. They had like Moonbeam, which was I think meant to do more with trying to do theatrical stuff. They had a bunch of other side projects where they tried to like move away and do bigger things. They became Full Moon Studios for a little bit. I think they're back to Full Moon Pictures now. What impresses me about this company, like, we watched the trailer for one of the more recent ones, Dr. Death, and it looks pretty cheap. Let's be real.
It looks fun.
And I think it's off regard, like, from like Puppet Master, like 4 or 5 onwards, they're not that good. And as someone who just watched retro Puppet Master, I can kind of confirm that. The fact that this company is still going and survived not only straight from videos to DVDs, but survived going to streaming as well. Like, they have their own website. You can buy the merch from their own website. In fact, they have an add-on for Prime. I just find it really impressive that this company's managed to keep going.
Yeah.
When a lot of other studios have struggled.
For sure.
I suppose when the cost of their films is so low.
Yeah.
There's less to lose.
Yeah, exactly. They've kept it going, so fair play to them. And they've, in the 3 Puppet Master films that I've seen anyway, they've found different ways to make it intriguing and not necessarily tell the same story again and again and again.
Yeah, so that's a bit of the spoiler there. So yeah, it's like we have watched 3 Puppet Master movies now together. In fact, after the first one, I could tell quite early on you were interested, because the film opens with an elderly man, Andre Toulon,
Yes.
who is the puppet master that creates the puppets that we follow.
Yes.
We see him in the bodega being chased down by who we assume, like, shady characters with like dark coats and hats, which we can assume are Nazis based on other films. And he takes his own life.
Yes, he does.
That's a pretty strong opening to the film.
Yeah.
And I think then you were into like, oh, okay.
Well, there was a few things going on. Because, yes, obviously, elderly man hiding his puppets away from the Nazis, taking his own life before the Nazis can ambush him, is intriguing in and of itself. But we also had puppet cam, which I really liked.
I like puppet cam. It's specifically like Blade's POV. We'll get to the puppets, I think.
Cool, okay.
In a second.
But yeah, there was a lot going on in that opening that,
It's a little noise like, hearing them like make noises as they're running around.
And then like when he bashes into something, it's like, Yes, it's a solid opening for a film.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So we are mostly going to be talking about the first film here, because I do think like the second and third films do deserve.
We debated about whether combining them
into a trilogy. Because for a long time I thought the second one was my favourite, and now I actually might think it might be the third one.
Third is all the way.
It is very good. So as soon as we finished watching the first one, we started watching the second one.
Yeah, we
didn't.
did.
I never expected to be a double bill.
No, I don't think anyone did.
And the second one does a lot. Like, God, these films are old. I'm going to do spoiler one anyway. They bring Andre Toulon back to life as a living corpse because they're running out of the formula that the puppets need to survive.
Yes,
it's a genius idea and
fun.
Makes it so different from the first film.
Yeah.
And then a few days later, we watched Puppet Master 3, which goes back in time to Nazi Germany, and we see the origins of a couple of these puppets. We find out who they all were, and we follow Andre Toulon as a main character. And it's great. Each of these films in these trilogy is very different from the last one.
Yes.
Elements of that I like and don't like. I do think they get better, but the first one has a... Let's be fair, the cast in the first film is not the strongest.
It's not the best.
Do you have the names of any of the big players?
Yes, I do. So, I suppose I got the main character. So this is focusing on the group of psychics that have been assembled. We have Alex, who is an anthropology professor. He's played by a guy called Paul Lamont. We'll trickle back to Alex in a minute.
He's not very good.
We have Dana, who is like a fortune teller. She works at a psychic, and she's deeply southern accent.
I mean, when we meet her, isn't there a cameo by Barbara Crampton?
There is, in her scene, yeah. So Dana's played by Irene Miracle, I think. It's
That's a cool last name.
We have Clarissa, who is some kind of scientist, and she works along with her partner or her husband called Frank. Frank is played by a guy called Matt Rowe, and Clarissa is played by Catherine O'Reilly. Clarissa has a very specific... So they're all psychic in different ways. Clarissa is psychic because she can pick up on specific memories and sensations just by physically touching an object. So if she sits on a bed, for instance, where people have had sex, then she will feel the physical sensations of that.
Yeah. Or if she gets to do a lift where a woman was assaulted, she feels...
Yes.
I wish they did more with that, because that's really interesting.
It's a very interesting scene, which I do think the film revisits in its own way.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah, you are right. So it's like good and bad with that particular psychic skill. So yeah, they work in some kind of science lab, very focused on sex. But they're all brought together by this guy called Neil Gallagher, who is like the big bad.
He is the puppet master, the modern puppet master.
Yes. So he is, what exactly is he? He's some kind of researcher that at some point in the past has assembled this team of psychics in order to
find Andre Toulon's research, because they know this is where he died, and we see from the beginning that he hides the puppets in their case in the walls of the hotel. So he desperately wants to try and find the ability to bring things, inanimate objects, to life, and that's why he went there. And he ends up marrying the daughter of the owners of the hotel. Megan, who's she played by?
Robin Freites.
I must say, at no point does she ever act like a grieving widow in this film.
No, that's very true.
Yeah.
Hello. I hope this visit wasn't entirely unexpected.
No, Neil told me you'd be coming.
They've been brought there because they know what his research was and doesn't want anyone to find out, nothing to lead back to his grand master plan, and that's why he's ordered the puppets that he discovered when he discovered Andrew's research to kill them off.
Yes.
Because, shockingly, Gallagher is kind of alive. There's lots of really cool scenes of like his body moving around.
I really
and
like
he's
that.
like just solid, like almost like
A
a doll. So he's used his research to bring himself back to life. So he's kind of like undead, and he's like, only if you destroy his body now can he be killed.
Yes.
We don't get a ton of time with him outside of him being completely still, but I love it when they find him just in rooms.
Yeah,
he's got this smile. I really.
It's an eerie element. I really enjoy seeing his. Well, you don't actually see his body move about, but every now and then he'll just be positioned in a chair. He'll be in someone's hotel room.
It's almost like watching the Annabelle doll.
In a way, yeah. He's just moving without anyone seeing and appears at different rooms in the hotel. I really enjoy that element. Yeah.
And then we see him like when he's up walking about, and he's just one of the typical late 80s bad guy. He's clearly just having a bit of fun with the role.
Unhinged.
Yeah, he wants to live forever, but the only people who were close to knowing what his research was were these group of psychics, so he gets them all killed. I don't think they really had a clue. I think they generally thought he was dead.
This is the interesting thing, sorry, just to chime in, because the psychics are generally quite good at picking up on stuff, but for some reason, none of them were able to pick up that he was in fact, like, undead.
Yeah, or that they were about to die.
Yeah, none of them predicted their own
Alex,
death.
before going there, does have a couple of visions of
Gallagher
future
and
deaths.
Megan dancing together as well.
But also, like, leeches and throat slits, and he does pick up on a lot of it. That's his whole thing, is he can kind of see glimpses of things to come. And the whole film, this is something that's kind of lost in the sequels, is the film has a very dreamlike feeling about it.
It does.
And we have a lot of, like, psychic scenes that do just feel like dreams, and it's an interesting aesthetic.
Yes.
But I don't think anyone ever regards this. That's also part of my pitch was, the first one's not really regarded as the best.
Oh yeah, you did say that to me.
It's a good film, and I always really enjoy watching it, but it's hard when you really do not care for any of the characters and you're just waiting for them to get killed off. Because out of the three we watched, this is the most puppet light out of all of them.
Yes, it's the most, in a way, mysterious of the ones that we've seen, and the acting generally is a bit of a turn off. Like, with the exception of a couple of psychic characters, mainly Clarissa, Frank, and Dana, I didn't really care for any of the other acting, and it's a shame because Alex, the guy that can dream the future, who's just basically like a nice guy and is sort of immediately attracted to Megan when he arrives, and Megan, Gallagher's widow, their acting is awful. And
they have no chemistry.
They have zero chemistry. He looks about 20 years older than her, like, for one thing, which is a bit weird.
I love them like all my other children, like my other puppets. They mirror the soul of their master, and with me they are harmless, but I fear what they are capable of if placed in the wrong hands.
Yes, you are right. She doesn't act in any way like a grieving widow. And initially I was like, should I be a bit suspicious of her? Like, is she in on it? Like, does she know why her husband's brought them all here? No, she just can't act, unfortunately. So it's hard a lot to root for the characters. I will get into the deaths, I guess.
Well, we might as well jump into the deaths and the puppets.
Well, there we go then.
Now,
okay.
Because that's what keeps bringing you back to these films, is the puppets of Puppet Master.
Oh, yeah.
So we first meet them at the very beginning of the film. There are two puppets there that we will not see again, like Genji and something Khan. I think it was actually based off a real Chinese puppet. We see them at the beginning. Shredder Khan, that was his name, Shredder Khan. We won't see them again in this film.
Yeah.
But the main collection of puppets we have Blade.
Yes.
Who is kind of has like a white skull face. Gaunt face with like little spikes come out of his eyes.
Little
kind of
trilby hat.
hisses, trilby, black coat, and he's got a hook and a switchblade. Blade. We have Pinhead, who's a stocky wombo, teeny tiny little head.
Teeny tiny little head.
You're going to
massive
see
hands.
so much of him like grabbing and punching.
Yeah.
There's Tunneler.
Yes.
He's basically wearing a military uniform and he has a spinning blade on top of his head, and he will just
tunnel,
go 90 degrees and just run and just tunnel into things.
Yeah.
We have Jester.
Yes.
Whose whole thing is his head split into 3 layers and spins around, and when it stops spinning it's in a different position. I really liked the design of Jester.
Looks like a very classic, Joker-esque figure. Like
A Jester, almost.
Harlequin-esque,
Yeah.
yes.
And we
Looks like
have
a Jester.
Leech Woman,
Yeah, we got Leech.
who vomits up leeches onto people. And I remember, like, I told a few friends that I was watching this movie, and they never heard of it. I took pictures of Sam's reactions to certain scenes, just like, and that is when, like,
the video.
Frank is... No, I'll not do that to you. When Frank was, like, bound to the bed for research purposes.
Him and Clarissa are just shagging.
Yeah, but the thing is, he has, like, a voice recorder who's, like...
Sidebar note to transcriber. File under personal documentation and be sure to annotate the location.
Are you ready?
What? You have someone annotate your sex audio?
It's weird research, man.
Weird research. Like,
Yeah.
does that make anything they buy for sexual acts like a tax write-off?
Don't know.
I don't know. But he's, like, bound and everything. She
She's
has
on
been...
top.
Well, she's now underneath the bed because Tunnel has had
Yes.
drilled her to pieces. That, again, is great, getting her in the leg, getting her in in the eye. When the puppets are around, you are just going to have so much fun. And Leech Woman literally vomits up a leech onto him, and she's done really interestingly, because I think the vomiting up leech head was like a silicone head that would stretch, and it's the noise like... Because it's massive that comes out and just starts putting leeches all over, which was... Alex had predicted earlier in the movie in a dream, but obviously didn't make any sense to him.
I don't know how they did it, but I remember watching the scene for the first time, laughing my arse off just at the, like, ridiculous sex between Clarissa and Frank. And then, yeah, like, Tunneler killing Clarissa was one thing. And then there's that brilliant line from Frank, because he thinks that she's, he's blindfolded, and he thinks that she's trying to scare him. So he's like, come on, I have no sense of humour. It's just, I absolutely loved.
That was a great line. I have no sense of humour.
Up pops Leech Lady.
Chris, I have no sense of humor. You little minx. You really had me going there.
Which is a puppet we've not seen before in the film. Just proceeds to very slowly and agonisingly vomit leeches onto Frank, who eventually manages to get his blindfold off and sees what's happening to him and just screams in terror.
Yeah.
Probably dies of a heart attack, I imagine. But the effects of Leech Lady, especially with the jaw like elongating and seeing the leeches come out of her, it's actually just mind-boggling. But I just remember thinking, like, what the fuck? Because like the other puppets, like, weird looking as they are, it's like, they've got a blade, or, like, they use their hands and, like, pretty,
drill.
like, general weapons. But to have a lady vomit leeches, that just completely came out of nowhere for me, and I was floored.
And if you want to know the origins of why, you have to wait till the third movie.
Loved it.
I loved Pinhead beating up the other psychic lady, whose name was completely...
Dana.
Gallagher had moved into her room at that point. And she's just kind of been... She kind of censored some stuff. She's been putting cleansing spells everywhere.
She's not fazed by it at all. Which
not
I really
not
like.
fazed by it.
Yeah, she's not scared. But
And Tunnel gets
there.
Pinhead like grabs my leg and it kind of breaks.
Yeah, it breaks her shin.
So she ends up like crawling along the floor, and he's just like punching her in the face.
And Blade is there.
And Blade's there as well.
Slashes her throat.
Yeah, there's a housekeeper that's killed by them as well. Whenever the puppets are around, you are having really good fun, especially for the budget. The smartest thing from a production and a budget standpoint was not having the puppets talk.
Yeah.
They make noises, but that is something that Chucky would always struggle with for needing a massive crew. To be able to make him express, they can get away with that in Puppet Master. They can open their mouth and hiss and stuff, but they don't actually talk, and I think that makes it so much simpler for them.
Yeah.
But they all still have little personality. Like Jester's always kind of like... Cindy always kind of looks a little bit like...
He's a bit meek.
Bit meek. Yeah. Blade, he always with his hook, he'll tip his hat and stuff like that.
And when
like
he gets excited.
Yeah, his little eyes pop out.
Pupils, like...
I really like that. All the puppets have a distinct look and personality.
Yeah.
I think Blade, we said, is one of the only ones whose design doesn't really change throughout the films, like clothing-wise, and he's on the most covers.
Yeah.
And there's only one that he's not on the cover for.
I think Blade is generally the scariest looking puppet.
He is. I don't know if this is basic. Blade is my favourite puppet. I love Blade.
I see that, yeah.
I think Blade is awesome.
Yeah, I totally
Who would you
get
say
it.
is your favourite of the puppets?
Oh, I don't know, because initially I would have said Blade, purely based off the fact that if I was confronted with a Blade puppet, even just, like, average size person, like seeing a Blade-looking figure, I would shit myself. Who's my favourite at the minute? I don't know. I probably... It's a toss between Jester and Pinhead, maybe.
Pinhead's cool. I like Pinhead.
I like Pinhead, yeah, he's a cutie. I don't know. I don't actually have an all-time favourite at the minute.
Yeah. But it says a lot that, like, a film with such bad acting and essentially weak side characters can still bring you in just because the puppets are so much fun when you do see them.
Yeah, for sure. I will just revisiting that whole sequence of, you know, we've got, like, the dual death of Clarissa and Frank taken out pretty simultaneously. Then, not so many scenes after, like, almost consecutively, Dana is killed by Pinhead and Blade in the elevator. And they're two really solid sequences, like 3 good deaths all around, really good use of different puppets as well. My problem is that they are 3 really interesting characters to watch that are killed off almost consecutively.
We're left with the ones who aren't very
We're
interesting.
left with the really boring ones.
Yeah.
From here on in. That's my problem with the movie.
The movie is quite unbalanced. Is probably the better way of putting it. And they definitely honed in on their ideas for the sequels and tightened things up a little bit. But I do miss the dreamlike, because the psychic element doesn't really come back into it properly. I'd say until Puppetmaster 4, where there is a psychic character. You'd think it'd be a massive part of the franchise going forward, but it kind of, well, the ones I've seen anyway, it isn't.
Yeah.
But it's such a big part of this first film. The movie's just kind of fun.
Oh, it's brilliant. Like, don't get me wrong, I do actually really like the first film. You know, you mentioned before, like, there's some really kind of trippy, nightmare-esque, almost surreal sequences that are peppered throughout. You know, like, just first of all, yeah, Gallagher's corpse just moving around, I think that's brilliant. It's done very well. We keep cutting back to this moment of Gallagher and his wife dancing in this really empty ballroom, which is just kind of,
He's got a weird mask on.
It's eerie and mysterious, and it's like, well, what does that mean? And I really like all of that. But a problem I have, like, acting, casting aside, I did feel, I've watched this film twice now all the way through, and we're still there the second time, that it feels in a way like the film is a bit disconnected. You know, you said it feels a bit inconsistent sometimes. But I think it's more, to me, because, like, a lot of the time in the movie, we have stuff going on with different characters that obviously, like, we, the audience, are aware of, but none of the other characters are aware of. So it's like, right, you know, Dana's going through something in her room. Meanwhile, Alex and Megan are doing their own thing. Clarissa and Frank are off doing their thing. The puppets are doing their own thing. So it's like we're going in, like, so many different places. And it's only really at the end where things kind of, like, coincide. You know, we get that scene at the beginning where all of the psychics and Megan are around the table for dinner. But then, from that point on, everyone splits off. And I think I felt that, in a way. And it's not so much a criticism, because, you know, like, they do interesting things with those characters in their own right, but it just felt like we were just hopping from, like, one thing to another, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Even then getting to, like, the finale of the movie when Gallagher is revealed to still be alive and he's had these puppets. The movie wraps up very quickly.
Yeah.
Realistically, his motive is pretty weak. And we get a bit of a fist fight between him and Alex. So the puppets turn on him. And it's not initially clear why.
I'm tired of experimenting with silly little wooden puppets.
These silly wooden puppets.
Yeah. He clearly has no love for the puppets. And even the brief scene we have with Andre Toulon, we can see he cares for them. So the puppets then turn on him. And it's a great scene in the lift. Like, you see like, Pinhead starts, like, attacking him, and he pulls his head, like, pulls Pinhead's head off. Tunneler goes in, and he's clearly in pain, like, a lot of pain. So he tries to escape through the vent in the lift. And that's where Blade's there, chops his fingers off. Pinhead holds him down. Leech Lady starts putting leeches into his mouth stabs him in the hand to keep him there. We've got Tunneler going into the side of his head. I'm like, this is actually pretty awesome. For some reason, Alex is like, no, stop it. Like, why? Why are you trying to save him?
Fuck off, Alex. Meanwhile, Megan's just having a breakdown because she can't cope with anything. She literally can't cope with anything that happens in this movie.
Yeah. It does feel like a very quick 180 that the puppets just turn on their master. And it's actually weirdly an issue I have with the second one, because the ending is very similar in the second one, where they suddenly turn on the resurrected Andre at that point.
So
for unclear reasons. So I always see it as, I'm assuming you're going to ask
Oh, yeah.
Why I
Yes.
think that happened.
Yeah.
I think the puppets need a puppet master in order to remain existing, because we know from the second one that there is a formula they need.
Yes.
But I think the puppets, more than anything, are loyal to each other, and they'll do what their puppet master asks them to do, but they do not stand. I think they don't stand for being picked on.
They need to be treated well.
They need to be treated. They
By
want to
their
be treated
puppet
with
master.
respect.
But their loyalty is to themselves ultimately. So if they see one of their friends being mistreated, then there's no loyalty to the puppet master.
Yeah, that's how I interpret the ending.
Puppet masters are expendable.
There's always going to be more puppet masters.
I would just like to talk about the elevator scene at the end with Gallagher's showdown, because we mentioned earlier that there's a scene with Clarissa where she first arrives at the hotel and she and Frank are being taken up to their room, and it's this really old elevator, you know, like with the iron bars, and you've got the door that you need to like pull to one side, and she starts having a psychic vision that we kind of see, but she instantly starts crying and she's like in pain, and she says a woman was assaulted in this elevator, and and she says it was Gallagher. Gallagher has assaulted a woman here, and this poor woman was screaming no, and she didn't, trying to fight him off. The reason I bring that up is, first of all, because like kind of a curse to be inflicted with that psychic ability.
Yeah, a little bit.
Also, though, the finale where Gallagher is himself trapped in an elevator,
saying no,
screaming no, and asking for help, and being pinned down, and not being able to do anything about it. Ha!
It is ultimately the female puppet as well. It's Leech Woman who ultimately kills him.
Yeah, it is.
With Leech down the throat. So, yeah, justice.
Justice served by the puppets.
They then hint at one of the psychics had a taxidermy dog as well that she talked to. So at the end we see Megan, was it, who has the dog, and she's kind of brought it to life. So clearly she's learned the tools of the puppet master. Don't need to think about it because she's killed off screen before the next film.
Yeah, like even the filmmakers were like, you know what? We're not going to bring Alex and Megan back. Like we're going to tell our own story.
I think one thing that became very clear to you going into the sequels was continuity means nothing.
Yes.
At the beginning of this film, Andre dies in 1939. His gravestone at the very beginning of the second film says 1941.
Yeah, which peeved me to no
The
end.
third film is also set entirely in 1941.
Yeah, it is. So, yeah.
We know from the second film that he gets his abilities in Cairo in 1937, but then I'm jumping forward here to like 1998, 1999 when Retro Puppet Master came out. It turns out Andre actually got them when he was living in Paris. When someone visited him, a puppet master came to him, the one who stole the techniques, the magic, and gifted them onto him, and that's way before the 1930s.
Yeah.
Also, change it to be more magic than it is a formula, and the transfer method was different.
Yeah, like I'm used to inconsistencies with my horror films.
Yeah, apparently, as the films go on, the timeline just gets muddier and muddier and muddier. So you just kind of need to watch them, and one of them is a soft reboot.
Right.
I can't remember which one it is. I did find a picture of like the timeline that I'll put up here. You just gotta not pay attention to the inconsistencies. The first few films came out like a year apart. They clearly didn't have a plan going forward, and I think they realized straight away that people were interested in Andre Toulon.
Yeah.
But they're like, but we killed him off really quickly.
Yes, that was interesting to me in the second one. I wasn't really expecting him to be a main character.
I also find it funny that Andre is played by a different person in the first three films.
Yeah.
And the guy who plays him I keep forgetting his name. It's Guy Rolfe.
Yeah.
He ended up playing him a couple of times, not in as much of a major role as he did in the third film. He had smaller roles, so he was getting on quite. I think he passed away in 2003.
William Hickey plays him in the original, in the opening prologue.
I do think Guy is the best of the Andres. I think he was great. Like I said, this isn't a video on the second and third films. Like they do kind of deserve their own, but it is interesting to see the trajectory of this trilogy when they clearly didn't have a plan at the beginning, but picking the parts that really worked, and that was Andre being a really interesting character, and the puppets. Like as the film goes on, especially in this trilogy, we get more puppets, and each film will introduce a new puppet. Like in the second one, we got Torch,
Yes.
who has no problem killing children, and in the third one, we get Six Shooter, who, as a puppet, I really like. I find him really annoying. It's that laugh. I think it was Charles Band's dad who did the voice for him, who was someone who actually escaped from the Nazis,
Oh.
voicing a puppet that kills Nazis.
Oh, wow.
Life is just one big battle for you, isn't it? Bang, 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 and you are happy as a sandboy.
It was either his dad or his granddad. There was definitely a reason. But Six Shooter was initially supposed to be in the first one, but not as a cowboy. He was meant to be a six-armed ninja. But I think they just couldn't make it work.
Interesting.
Then or couldn't fit him in, so they repurposed the idea for Puppet Master 3, Toulon's Revenge.
3 is the best. I'm just going to say it. I adore 3. I think it's a solid film all round. Solid revenge film as well. And it's the puppets versus Nazis, man.
Yeah.
I know who I'm rooting for. It's not the Nazis.
Nazis are a perfect villain because no one sides with the Nazis because they're the Nazis and they're evil.
Yeah.
And I think it was interesting to make to go along the route of making the puppets more the protagonists.
Yeah. I think what you were saying before about, like, the timeline and consistency across the franchise is just sort of, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
But I do think within that, like as I said, I've only seen the first 3. But I can tell where they've kind of gone off on their own
tangents.
But you can still scramble some kind of cohesive story.
Yeah.
Because it's like, yes...
If you just ignore a couple of dates, you're kind of fine.
Yeah, 1931 to 1940... It's 39, moving it to 41. It's like, it's annoying. Because, again, I watched the 2 films back to back, so it was very fresh in my mind. It's annoying. It's a shame that the filmmakers didn't pick up on that, but, it still works. It's like Toulon was still around in Nazi Germany, still persecuted by the Nazis. I can move past that.
Yeah.
What is interesting, and I appreciate this is not a video on all 3 films, but the way that they changed Toulon's character as well, because Toulon that we get in the second one is not the guy that we get in the prologue of the first film. It's very different again in 3.
Resurrected zombie Toulon is very difficult to alive Toulon.
I think, have we made it clear how he actually brings the puppets back to life? It's this ancient Egyptian ritual, isn't it?
I can go into that. We don't really find out until the third one how it works. I remember that was something that interested you when I told you this, because there's hints at it. We see the formula in the second one, because I'll not go into that one too much. But in the third one, it's kind of revealed that all the puppets have the souls of people. They used to be people. I always kind of see it as once they become the puppets, they're not really themselves. They're something new. Retro Puppet Master ruins that idea for me, but that's a video for another day, Retro Puppet Master. I did enjoy it, but it's not good. It's got Mark from The Room in it. He talks about it in his book. So yeah, he will put the souls of his friends and loved ones into these dolls to try and save them. You might as well go to the quick origins of it.
Can I?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the core connection between them all, they are all killed by Nazis. Leech Lady actually has the soul of his dead wife, Elsa, who is shot and killed by a Gestapo general. Pinhead was once a truck driver who was smuggling food into the Jewish ghettos. He was found guilty and he was killed. He was shot for treason. Tunneler, he was a soldier who was forced to work in the Nazi salt mines. He died down there of exhaustion. Jester was a bookkeeper who told a lot of jokes at the Nazis' expense. Word got back to the Nazis and they killed him. And Blade is actually modelled after the Gestapo general that killed Elsa, Toulon's wife, but the vessel is inhabited by the soul of Dr. Hess, who was a good doctor who was working for the Nazis, albeit somewhat begrudgingly, and actually befriended Toulon and befriended the puppets before he was also killed by a Nazi. So that's a common thread between them. It's like, it's questionable how much of the soul of the person is retained inside the puppet. Like, what memories do they have? Like, how conscious are they? But all of them, to an extent, they've needed these souls to come back to life.
Toulon says, because Dr. Hess asks him, what is the key? He's like, I can replicate the formula, but it won't work. And he's like, it's all about a want to survive, a need to continue that keeps the soul alive. And it's interesting that we spread this over 3 films. It also does lead to a bit of an inconsistency with Leech Woman for me, because Leech Woman is burnt I'm going to assume burned to death in that one. I don't know if she appears in any of the other in the other films, but how resurrected Andre acts, because his whole thing there is he takes one of our lead characters who he thinks looks a bit like Elsa and wants to put her soul in the giant life-size puppet. I don't think that's cool when the soul of your actual Elsa is across the room from you in a puppet.
Yeah, that's very
That
true.
was initially modelled after her.
Yeah.
So I don't think in the second film they decided that
They
yet.
clearly had. And this is where, like, you know...
Still doesn't take away from my enjoyment
No, absolutely
of the film.
Not. Absolutely not. But yeah, it's even hinted at in the original. There's I think Alex tells Megan, you know, like they were studying ancient Egyptian stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of explained. Hats off to the puppeteers.
Oh, you took notes of a few of their names, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. So we had the same puppeteers on 1, 2, and 3. I don't know if they also worked on 4 and any others, but I know for a fact they all worked on the original trilogy. Joanne Bloomfield, John Tesker, Chris Endicott, and Brett White. And the actual puppet master, the guy behind all of the designs and whatnot, is a guy called David Allen, who used stop motion animatronics to work on them all. So,
yeah, it's
off.
Yeah, it's an incredible work on the puppet, especially for the budget as well. You can see it cuts corners and bits. It's a bit cheap in places, but the puppets are where it.
The acting is not great.
Yeah, the puppets are what brings this film to life, and especially when there's so many other things that do kind of bring it down. Like, I don't think the bodega as a hotel acts enough like a character, considering it's a main part of the first 2 films. I'm glad we don't see it in the third one. I know it was a miniature work that they kind of just held in front of the camera to put it on the landscape. I like stuff like that.
Yeah, sure.
But they could have done more to make the hotel feel more
of a...
Yeah, and even though in the second one we see a lot of the same rooms, it doesn't feel like the same building.
It doesn't. That was a big criticism I had. It took me a while to even realise
it was the same place.
That it was set in the same hotel. I thought they were in, like, Alex's house or something.
Yeah, Alex is being blamed for all the murders and has kind of lost his mind a bit. It was killed off screen.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they really didn't want to continue. I know the director, Schmoller. I don't know if he had a disagreement. It's hard to tell, like, what his relationship was afterwards, because he didn't come back for the second one. And he says he thinks Charles Band and Full Moon didn't want to admit how much of their, you know, flagship franchise he created.
Yeah.
And he claims they were still owed him residuals. But he did direct films for them in the future as well, so I do think credit where credit's due. He made a very interesting film, and
yeah, he has. And I agree with you when you said before that the first one has a kind of aesthetic and almost mysticism about it that none of the sequels subsequently have. Like, the sequels are just kind of like straight up horrors and slashers in a way, whereas the first one does have, like, it's almost, I mean, R.I.P., but, you know, like David Lynchian-esque sort of imagery, like borderline like Twin Peaksy in a way, like with the dancing and the corpse just moving around.
Yeah.
And like this surreal imagery, which that I've seen anyway, we don't have in subsequent sequels.
Do you have any more notes on this one? Would you recommend Puppet Master to anyone who's nervous to watch it, especially whilst it's available on Prime?
Yes, I would. I definitely would. It's a really fun film, and the puppets are everything.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting idea, and yeah, it's cheap in some ways. I think with better actors for some parts, not all of the actors, but just some, really would have like maybe made it more of a hard hitter.
That's what I think the sequels have. The second one, the acting is a bit better, but they also know to kill off the side characters quicker.
Yeah.
The third one has a really good side cast.
Yeah.
And the ones that I actually do care for, and hate. You know, because they're not the characters you naturally hate because they're evil, but they're all interesting.
Yeah.
And that's something else that makes me feel like this trilogy just gets better.
I do just want to say as well, like, we're really sorry for the lack of any set dressing for this video. We did find Toulon's puppet box where you can get all of the puppets. We found some puppets that you can get individually. Unfortunately, if we'd have ordered them even like a week ago, they wouldn't have arrived in time.
No, I think we are committed to doing another Puppet Master video.
Yeah.
Mainly so that we can justify buying
the
a
Toulon's puppet box.
So in future, I even try. It's hard to get a copy because I know a lot of the films were discontinued for a while until like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So in some ways, I couldn't get any of the Blu-rays quickly enough.
Yeah.
By the time we decided to do this, scheduling has been tricky this
Yes.
time of year.
Yes.
But
been busy.
yeah. So hopefully for the second one, we'll be able to have some type of set dress for that one.
Yes.
It also means that we can commit to doing at least one more Puppet Master video.
I think so. Even if we just sort of deep dive into 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Or 3.
Just
Just 3.
We are not skipping Puppet Master 2.
I wouldn't mind. But no, I think we will revisit it. But yeah. And if we do, when we do, next time we promise we will have Puppet Master merch.
A puppet. Hopefully a blade. I would like a blade.
Yes.
You can get like the big fancy box set of which has it's like this big or something. It has some of the puppets in, but all the films on Blu-ray going down the middle.
Yeah.
I know that's expensive, but it's cool.
Yeah.
It's one of the coolest looking box sets I've ever seen.
Like, isn't it just? It's so cool as well because all of these films straight to video, and we're talking about the first one that came out 40 years ago or something, and the merch that you can get for it is so cool. I just love that. I love that a film has a long life after its initial run.
Yeah, because I know they used to go to conventions and stuff like that as part of the Paramount sites. I think Paramount did the first 4, so it definitely is a quality drop off budget wise afterwards.
Yeah,
but especially with Video Zone, their magazine, they would do behind the scenes. They did little featurettes on behind the scenes of Puppet Master 3, which was really interesting, showing how they made it. And they would go and they would have stalls where they'd show off their merch and all the other films that they were doing. I'm like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But do you have any more notes on this one?
I do not.
I'm going to throw it off to our channel members. I want to thank you guys. Because you guys supporting the channel really makes this possible. Your contributions are going to go towards a Puppet Master doll. I hope you guys are okay with that.
Yeah.
Like I say every week, you guys do make this possible, and you are awesome. And so, anyone else seen Puppet Master? And who is your favourite puppet? And it can be a puppet from the later films as well, because I have to give Retro Puppet Master this. There are some cool Puppet Master designs, and Dr. Death especially is a really cool design.
Who's your favourite puppet?
Who's your favourite puppet? So thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you when we see you.
Bye.